Dealing with people, I think, is just one part of leadership. I think the other parts are, where is your organization going? What are you trying to achieve with this group of people you have in your organization? How are you going to get them there? What support do they need to get there? Are they going to have the right tools to do their jobs properly? What training do they need to do their jobs properly? How are you going to decide who the right person for your organization is? And all of those things, they don't really have anything to do with empathy. They're much more logical.
Today, I'm learning from Areti Iles. She's the head of professional services for enterprise applications at Telefonica Tech in the UK. Areti shares with us her definition of leadership, which she broadens beyond the traditional constraints. We cover the differences between managers and leaders, the criticality of empathy for effective leadership, some tools that we can use to measure our own personality or leadership styles, and even how leaders need support from their teams too. I have to admit, Areti's point of view challenged my own thinking at several times during our conversation, which is great. I love learning from leaders with different styles to mine. And whether your style already coincides with Areti or not, I'm sure you'll learn lots from today's conversation. Areti, welcome to the Practice Leading podcast. It's so great to have you on the show. You and I have been connected for a little while, so it's great to finally meet you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
On this show, we're trying to help people become better leaders. Help me become a better leader. I'm trying to follow in your footsteps. You have a particular definition of leadership. We were just chatting, and you said it's possible to be a leader of one person. You can lead without having any direct reports. I'm fascinated by that idea. Tell us more.
Yeah, so you can be a leader of yourself, basically. You don't need to have a person. You can just be a leader in your life, and we all are in a way.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing for me because my background is in business management and kind of business strategy and that kind of thing, and my academic background anyway. And a lot of the time there is this suggestion when you're talking about leadership that it's a person in an organization that has the responsibility of looking after people below them, so to speak, from a structure perspective.
Yes.
And that is a leadership role, and anything else is not a leadership role. I understand that, and I'm not against that, but I think it's a very narrow view of what leadership really is about, because you can be a leader in your field, and okay, that may not be a leadership role, but you're still a leader in what you're doing with that. And at the same time, also, you could be leading people in an organization without actually being directly linked to them at all.
Right.
We all have our kind of different people that we influence, people that will listen to us. You know, we have people that we're closest to or least less close to in an organization as well.
Yeah.
So we have those relationships. So I think who is a leader is actually a bit of a broader definition for me. And I think from a leadership role perspective, it can be quite narrow. And actually, I think we have people that are great leaders, and we have people in leadership roles that are horrible leaders that really should not be in a leadership role. And and I see that all the time. Thankfully, not within my organization, but I see it when talking to people, or when people share their stories of good and bad leaders. Yeah, there's definitely something there.
Yeah, so I like that broadening of the definition. So somebody who inspires me, either in my organization or outside, is, especially if they inspire me to take action and move forward in a positive direction, that's a leader. Whether or no so they're leading me, they might not even know who I am or that I exist.
They might not even think of them. Yeah, they might not even think of themselves as a leader. A lot of the time, great leaders don't realize that they are leaders at all.
Yeah. So you don't think a leader has to have a mission in mind and a team in mind that they're leading? You can be a leader unconsciously.
Yes. Great title for a book, The Unconscious Leader. There you go. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Have there been people like that in your life that you think have inspired you and have unconsciously led you along and boosted your path?
Yeah, definitely. If we were all asked this question, I think potentially the people that we would think of weren't necessarily our leaders officially at all.
Right.
So I've had many people that have influenced me in my life in terms of my career, the choices I've made, people that have helped me, people that have given me guidance or advice, and they weren't necessarily linked to me in a leadership position. Some of them were, sure, but a lot of them weren't.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky to have that guidance. But there's also been leaders that have not given guidance, that have not given advice, that have not particularly and to a certain extent had the time to do it as well, because this is the issue with leadership roles in their defined, boxed definition of an organization, is that a lot of the time you're not necessarily given enough time to do the people elements of your leadership role.
Yeah.
So you end up doing your job, but you're not necessarily having the time to do the guidance and the advice and the looking after the people, which takes a lot of time.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to some of my childhood memories of my scout leader, and they acted as a leader. Obviously, they had a title, but the counseling and guidance they gave me was a leadership that I'd love to emulate. I remember my year 5 biology teacher. She was a leader and inspired me in my school career. So yeah, there's definitely examples of people who I didn't report to, but yeah, I would consider them to be leaders. So that's a really interesting idea. Is there a difference between a leader and a manager? In my own perspective, I think of managing things, projects, marketing campaigns, Scottish Summit events, community events, things like that. That's a thing that needs to get managed, and there may or may not be people involved. Whereas for me, a leader is involved with the people side of things. Do you agree with that definition, or am I going down a path?
No, I fully agree. I think what makes a leader is the fact that they care about people and they spend the time and the effort to actually make sure those people are doing the things that are important to them in their life, and they're trying to help them, give them the opportunities they need at the end of the day to get to where they want to be. I think for me that's the main difference, because a manager will not necessarily know what you're trying to achieve in your career, won't necessarily know how to help you get there. They may not be interested in knowing either. They just want you to do a good job. Great, are you doing a good job? Excellent. Well done. Yeah. Off we go. Whereas for me, a leader it kind of takes a more of a broader interest in you, your life, and what you're trying to achieve, and potentially the challenges that you're facing right now as well.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of situations, we all come to work every day and we have other things going on in our lives sometimes that are very much affecting how we are feeling, but we won't necessarily talk about that because we don't feel like the workplace is the place to get support for that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it makes a massive difference if one of the leaders in the business picks up on the fact that actually you don't look quite right, or you seem a bit, quiet, and they'll come and talk to you about it and say, are you okay? I know you're usually very, enthusiastic and passionate about these things, but I see that you've kind of a bit withdrawn. Is everything all right? And it's also about how leaders respond when things don't go well. Managers will often be very harsh on the people, whereas I think leaders will be harsh on the problem, very soft on the people, because they will recognize that, we are all trying to do a good job. I don't think anyone comes to work any day of the week thinking, I'm looking, how can I mess things up today? No one does that. We all really want to do a great job. I'd like to think anyway. So I've seen situations where managers have been very harsh on the people, and I'm thinking, well, it's not their fault. Things happen. It's about figuring out how can you actually, make sure that we all fix this together. And I think that makes a difference as well. How we deal with things when they don't go the right way.
I've never worked in one of those, at least I don't recall. Maybe if I went to see a trauma counselor, they would find something in my past. I don't recall ever working in an environment with one of those managers who yells and screams at people and tears strips off them and makes them feel terrible and treats them punitively. I don't think I've had that experience. Maybe I'm lucky. I don't know if you've had that experience. But, if I think of the way that Elon Musk, for example, is sometimes portrayed in the media as a very tough person to work for, famously sleeps in his office and fires people on a whim and does it in public. And some of those traits, if true, wouldn't live up to your ideal of what a leader is. And yet there he is, CEO of like 3 or 4 different businesses. He doesn't seem like an empathetic type that meets our standard that we've just set of being a leader. Do you think I'm being unfair on Elon Musk?
I mean, I don't know Elon Musk, so I don't know if all of those things are true or whether these are things people say about him. But I think it's important that however you are as a leader, you are genuine, because you don't want to change who you are. And if, in the case of Elon Musk, that is how he is, when he gets pissed off, about it, kind of person, he will attract a certain personality to work for him. And I think from what I know of him and his businesses, that is what he is all about. He's go big or go home kind of guy. So if that's not who you are as a person, you won't be attracted to that. But the people that will be attracted to that will then achieve something very, very specific. And I think in his business, he's trying to achieve something in a very specific way, and he thinks there is a very specific way to achieve it as well. So I think he gets credit for the fact that he's not pretending that he's an empathetic person, I guess is what I'm saying. You know what he's like before you go work for him, potentially. So
that's true.
I think that's okay. I think it's different if someone suggests that they're a very empathetic person and then you go to work for them and they're a completely horrible person that's not empathetic at all. I think then that's a bigger problem. But in the case of Elon Musk, I think it's you know what he's like before you go work for him or his businesses. So you shouldn't be surprised would I go work there? Probably not, because my personality is very different to that. But that's just what it is, different personalities.
Yeah. I was really lucky when I worked in California. One of the team members that I worked with, I took a job at SpaceX, and he arranged for us to go on a tour. So I got a tour of the SpaceX facility in Hawthorne, and it was fabulous, like amazing. I wasn't allowed into the control room in the mission control center. I wasn't a US passport holder, so I wasn't allowed in there, but it's got big glass walls, and I could see the team. And we went out with some of the crew from SpaceX in Hermosa Beach, which is like a party town by the beach, and fabulously talented, driven bunch of people, like party hard, work hard, super smart. And I think they know what they're getting themselves in for. And I felt a little bit inspired, despite the rumors about his management style. So it's interesting that he can, despite some of the press that he attracts, he can still attract some awesome talent.
And he is very driven. I think his behavior is driven by the fact that he really believes in the fact that he's trying to achieve something that is very difficult to achieve. And I think when you are trying to achieve something extremely difficult, I don't think necessarily that there is any other way to lead other than the way he is leading, because you don't, to a certain extent, have the luxury of, I'm going to call it wasting time, although obviously I don't consider it wasting time, but I think Elon would definitely consider it wasting time. He is laser focused on what he's trying to achieve. So from that perspective, I think, he's ruthlessly efficient in his leadership, which can be seen as not empathetic. Because to have empathy is to have long conversations with people sometimes. And I imagine he would say, I wish I could do that, but I don't have time for that, given what we're trying to do. So I think that's probably where he would be coming from.
I think we agree that having empathy and high EQ score, if that was measured, would be a great trait for a leader. Not all leaders have that. And I'm wondering if you were the chief executive of a Microsoft partner business and trying to grow that, and you didn't have that characteristic, could you surround yourself with other leaders in your leadership team who are more empathetic than you, who can look after the rest of the team while you focus on business development or strategy or finance or some other function? Can you surround yourself with people who make up for your missing characteristics?
I think to a certain extent you absolutely have to, otherwise your business isn't going to work. I think it's not going to survive well, or it's not going to be, you're going to have high attrition potentially. If you're a leader that doesn't have any empathy and you don't have anyone in your team that is able to fill that gap, you're going to have a gap in your business, and you're going to feel that from a performance perspective as well. Because at the end of the day, what is it? What is a team? What is a company? What is an organization? It's just people getting together, doing stuff together. That's it. And I think we lose sight of that when we say, this company has made billions of funds. Well, actually, no, people have come together, and other people have found what those people are doing valuable, and therefore there is revenue. So it's a byproduct, right? It's what the corporation does it for, but at the end of the day, it's people. So if you have a leader that is very good in some things and not others, I think a sign of a good leader is actually that self-awareness, to know what they are lacking and to get people working beside them that will tell them when they're lacking that. They will give them that feedback, but they will also feed into the decisions that are being made from a leadership perspective. And that's why I think the whole area of diversity and inclusion is so important in the last few decades, because we recognize now that if you do not have a diverse and inclusive leadership team, you're going to have blind spots.
Yes, absolutely.
And the only way to actually deal with it is to have people there that are from a diverse background and diverse experiences, so that you can actually support the people in the organization in the right way, that you try to minimize the amount of blind spots. I don't think you can never completely eradicate them, but at least if you've got enough people around you that are looking at different things and have different specialisms as well, you should have a good organization that works well, because no one is a master of everything.
Right. But positively looking for people and hiring people who are not like yourself is, it kind of goes against the grain, right? You meet somebody, you strike up a conversation, you find out you've got a lot in common, you seem to get on well. They naturally become somebody you might enjoy working with. But the fact that they're so like you might mean they're not a great candidate for your business. You need to find people who've got some opposites to you. And those people maybe aren't as easy to get along with initially, because they're different. They come from a different background, different culture. And you've got less in common. But I think you have to push through those biases and hire the people who can bring something that you haven't got, and not just look for more people like yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's what's needed as well. So we have clients that are very it's a personality thing. So you'll have clients that are very talkative. They love to have a chat. They love to, share their experiences. And you have clients that are all very factual. They're all about the numbers and the project and where it's going. And we have project managers that are very factual and numbers driven and where is the project going. And we have project managers that love a chat more than the other ones. And we like having a variety, because there will, it's a case of building the client relationship. And if you're a client that loves to have a chat and talk about things, and you get a project manager that only wants to talk to you about the project, only wants to talk to you about the numbers, only wants to talk to you about where you're going, only wants to talk to you about the things you haven't done, you're not going to enjoy that project experience. Sure, they are great. They're a great project manager, but it's not about their skills. It's about their ability to build a relationship with that client. And if you can't, and it's the same with the consultants. If you're a completely different personality, sure, it's a great experience. I think it's great to actually work with someone that's completely different to you, because you learn a lot more from that than working with someone that's just like yourself. But at the same time, I think it's difficult to build a relationship with someone where they won't give you anything back, and you just can't, you don't feel like you literally can't connect with them. So I think it's good to have that variety as well, because if you only had one type of one and not any of the other, yes, you would things would still probably be fine, but I think the overall feeling of, did I enjoy this project, that would eradicate a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it seems like you might be somebody who appreciates some of the tools that we can use to help people understand more about themselves. I'm thinking of the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or the DISC method, and those kinds of things that help you understand your characteristics. I find those. I read a book recently, and I need to think of the name of it. I went through the survey, and it said, I'm a rebel, and I hate being motivated externally or internally. And I find myself really hard to meet deadlines, whether somebody else is putting pressure on me and I'm trying to hold myself accountable. I'm the person who likes to go against the rules all the time. And it's like, finally, that's all these other boxes that somebody's tried to put me in never quite fit. This one, embarrassingly, it doesn't sound like a great label, but it's pretty accurate. Have you used a number of those tools with yourself, with your teams? Are you a fan of anything in particular?
So I don't like personality tests, actually, as it happens, because although I think being a rebel is a great thing, right? All I'm hearing is you like to make up your own mind, and I think that's fine. You don't like to be told. You just want to make up your own mind when you make up your own mind, and I think that's great. Probably I'm a rebel too. So I think we should all be rebels. But personality. So I'm not against them. I just think they need to be taken with a pinch of salt, because they're an indication of what someone is like, but we won't always be like that. It's the same, I think, for me with, how do you deal with conflict? In some examples, we'll go all guns blazing, and in some examples, we'll withdraw, and in some examples, we'll do something else. So I think we adapt to a certain extent. So I don't think we have one personality and that's it. I think our personality changes depending on the situation to a certain extent. So, personality tests are interesting, but for me, that's it. They're just interesting. It's interesting to see what they say about you and whether you would agree with them. But I wouldn't consider them if making a decision, so to speak, on anything. But they are fun. I'll give you that. They are very fun. Apart from if they tell you something you don't want to hear.
Yeah, I was thinking about that whenever you talk about the project manager, because when I think about a client and their communication style or preference, that's only one person within a customer organization. There's always a team of people in the customer organization we're working with, and they all have their own styles and preferences. And so a good project manager might have a certain natural style, and that fits well with the primary contact that they're interfacing with on a day-to-day basis. But they're going to be dealing with others, and they need to be able to bend their style from meeting to meeting or person to person, understand that they have a natural tendency, but they need to be able to change that from time to time, depending upon the audience. And I think that's a great characteristic to have as well.
Yeah, definitely. Adapting to change, I think, is the main thing that makes life a lot easier. I think is being able to adapt to change, for sure. Big characteristic.
So we've talked about this idea of inspiring people, having empathy, and understanding for them is one of the defining characteristics of a leader. Not having direct reports necessarily, or being in charge of something. Are there any other characteristics that you think defines a leader? Or let's expand that and go, what makes a great leader? Is it just lots of EQ? Is it tons of empathy? Or what else can elevate somebody to greatness in your mind?
So I think there is a difference between what makes a great leader and what makes a great leader likable. Because I think emotional intelligence and empathy makes you a likable leader. But does that make you a good leader? Yeah. And do we define a good leader as someone people like? Then the two, I think, are related. But for example, I think Elon Musk is a great leader. He just isn't always a very likable one for certain people. So I think it's a difficult one because it depends. Unfortunately, I think it depends on the situation, how you what each person values. So for me, a good leader is, yes, the having empathy part of it is important, because for me it's all about people dealing with people at the end of the day. Yeah. So I think if you're not good at doing that, and if you're not good at empathizing with someone's situation or where they're coming from, will they feel that you're a good leader for them? No, chances are they won't. Yeah. But there's also tough love. As a leader, sometimes you have to not be empathetic and actually say, look, things went wrong here and we need to fix this and we need to do something differently and this should never have happened. And it's there's a right way for me to do that and there's a wrong way for me to do it. I would never want to hurt someone's feelings, so I would focus on facts. But we're all human at the end of the day. Yeah. I think you try your best as a leader, but dealing with people, I think, is just one part of leadership. I think the other parts are, where is your organization going? What are you trying to achieve with this group of people you have in your organization? Yeah. How are you going to get them there? What support do they need to get there? How are they going to have the right tools to do their jobs properly? What training do they need to do their jobs properly? How are you going to decide who the right person for your organization is? And all of those things they don't really have anything to do with empathy. They're much more logical to a certain extent.
Yeah, that kind of strategic brain.
Yeah, so I think you need to have the strategic brain as a leader as well. And you don't have to be leading a whole organization. You could just be, leading a small team, but it's really all about, what are you trying to achieve? How are you going to get there? What does that look like for the people that are in there? How do the people need to change and adapt in order to deliver what we're asking them to deliver? Because a lot of the time it's a moving target within technology as well, what you're actually delivering now compared to what we're delivering in a year from now, particularly right now with the rise of AI. It's changing rapidly. So there is a huge amount of vision and aiming and strategy that needs to be looked at, particularly right now, as to how are you going to have a technology business that's going to survive in the future and keep being profitable? Because how the world is looking to use technology is changing rapidly right now. So it's I think that is a big part of leadership as well. No one wants a leader that everyone loves but actually drives a business to the ground.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have a job. At the end of the day, everyone wants a salary in their bank account every month. So unfortunately, I think empathy to a certain extent is very important but secondary, because one of the fundamental parts that you want from a leader is for them to lead you. You don't necessarily want them to give you a shoulder to cry on. Most of the time, you can get that from your friends and your family and your colleagues that love you. From what you want from your leader primarily is that direction and that vision.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's that making those big strategic decisions that keep the company profitable, that outpace the competition, that keep ahead of the changing technology. That's a real remarkable sign of an awesome leader.
Yeah, and explaining why as well.
Right. And being able to communicate and bring people along on the journey.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Are there one or two leaders that stand out in your mind, either historical leaders in literature that we don't often think of, or people in contemporary business circles that are paragons of leadership that you admire?
So there are leaders in my business currently that I think are leading in a very compassionate way. And what I mean by that is they very much care about the people. They want to make sure that everything that is being done makes sense to the teams, that everyone is clear what we're trying to achieve, everyone is clear why we're trying to achieve it, and everyone understands what their role is in it. But I think for me, the thing that makes the leaders you remember, or at least the leaders I remember historically, are the people that actually took the time to ask me, what am I trying to do after this current role I'm in? Where am I going with this kind of question? So when I was at university, I was working part-time for the majority of when I did my degree and when I did my master's. I was working part-time for this small wholesaler, and the first person that gave me my kind of first job was the managing director of that company, and he took a great interest in what I was trying to achieve in my life. And I was very young at the time. I was, I think when I started working there, I was actually probably still 18, if not 19. Right. And he gave me extremely high amounts of responsibility. I was managing the marketing and IT of the company, which you wouldn't necessarily give a 19-year-old. But he was absolutely up. He was like, "Go for it, do it. It's you'll be great." And to have that, to be given that responsibility by someone, particularly when you're that young, and for them to then say to you, what are you going to do next? I know you're not going to work here forever. What are you going to do when you finish? Where do you want to get to? Yeah. Having that guidance and that support and that interest by someone, it's almost like, I think the leaders you remember are the people that actually become your mentors effectively for the future. I think for me, that managing director of that company really stands out. Because he just let me run with it. He gave me lots of responsibility. I made a mistake in the HTML when I was editing it, and the website was down over the weekend, and he did not shout at me about it. I got it fixed. It was fine. He was very very kind to me, I think, is what I'm saying overall. And we stayed friends after that, and I miss him dearly because he passed away a couple of years ago from cancer, unfortunately. So yes, he was lovely. He was a wonderful man.
I like that idea of finding out what people want, where they want their career to go, what's the next step, what vision do they have for their lives, and helping them get there, either inside your organization, if possible, maybe outside if they have to. But there are quite a lot of people in life who don't quite know what they want to do. They don't have a map. They don't have a plan. They can't quite articulate what they want to do next. They're open to ideas, but they don't have a firm goal. And then there's another bunch who are contracting because they just love doing the job, the technical performance that they deliver, and they don't want to have to map out a career. They don't want to have to progress. They just want to deliver a great project, find another one, and do another great job over there. And that gives them flexibility without a lot of responsibility. How do we handle those people and lead them in that way that you've described, helping them find their path and help move them along it if they don't know what the path is or if they don't want one?
I think it's about potentially showing them the paths they could take. Because a lot of the time you don't know what you want to do because you don't really know. You're walking down a road that has no lights on it and it's just dark, and you've got no idea how you got there, why you're there, where are you going to go next. And I think it's kind of about shining a light in front of that road and going, you could go into these 15 different directions.
Yeah.
Which one, do you want to? Because that's also the question as well, and you raise a very valid point. Not everyone wants to have a career that develops and changes and gets higher and higher, so to speak, as time goes on. Some people will get to a certain point and that's what they like doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. We don't all have to aspire to be presidents of a country or whatever, however we decide that the pinnacle of success is. I think for me, being ultimately having, we're getting deep here, but having a successful life at the end of the day has 9 times out of 10 nothing to do with your job. Having a successful and fulfilling life, I would argue, it works very fulfilling and you can get massive amounts of joy from it and achievement. But are we ever going to be on our deathbeds wishing we had the chance to work for another 5 years and not retired when we retired? Right. Probably not. It's fun. Work's fun, but there's other things that are more fun. So I think it's a part of our life. Work's just a part of our life, and I think it's about making sure that what you're doing right now you're enjoying doing, and if you do know that there is a thing after it that you want to go on to, that you're using some of the time to prepare for that and plan for that. And I think it's, a lot of the time I see people that get to the annual review periods or promotion cycles in their companies, and they get to the review meeting and they go, oh, by the way, I want to get promoted. And it's like, it's a bit late to tell me now. If you had told me 6 months ago, we could have started looking at, what you need to do in order to get promoted. Yeah. Is there anything you're missing? And, if they're not great, by all means, get them promoted. But there is sometimes this element of people coming to you at a review meeting saying, oh, by the way, I was expecting to be promoted 3 months ago. And you think, well, why didn't you communicate that to anybody? So I think having a manager or a leader, however we decide to define it, someone that will say, are you trying to achieve something? Are you trying to get off this road that you're on? Are you trying to get somewhere else? So that you can actually help them get there, because there's nothing more devastating from an employee's perspective as well, for them to be wanting to get promoted and feeling like they deserve it. But then the company saying, that's great, but we had no idea you wanted to do this, and there's X, Y, and Z things that you haven't done, so you need to get them done. Or even worse, companies where they say, oh, that's great that you want to get promoted, but we only promote people once a year, and the next time we can promote you is a year from now. Have
never
fun.
Understood that. I never understood that annual cycle. But,
yeah. I didn't either. And in my company, we promote people when they're good and ready for being promoted. There's no timeline against it either. But I think having those conversations in advance with your manager is important. And this is the thing. I don't think it's your manager's or your leader's responsibility. I think people, particularly younger people, need to recognize that they need to be driving this to a certain extent. It's great if you have a manager or a leader that cares enough about you to ask those questions, but a lot of the time they might not. And I think we all need to take responsibility for making our feelings known, for lack of a better word, when it comes to work. And generally, I would argue.
You inspired me to go and have more conversations with my team about what they want to do. And the ones for whom I don't know what their path is, or they're not sure, I like that idea of letting them try lots of things, take lots of different paths. They just haven't found their groove yet. Let's figure out what that is by giving them lots of experiments, lots of different opportunities, and they'll find their path. And for those who are settled and don't really want to progress, that's great too. Like they there's other things in their life that they get a lot of value from. They don't need a lot of stress at work. So helping them retain that sense of safety and comfort and satisfaction is just as important as helping somebody else who's striving, right? So 2 good things I can take away from this and chat to my team about whenever I pick up with them next week. So that's great.
I'm glad to hear it.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation about what defines a leader? And if people would like to follow you and find out more about your content, how can they do that as well?
So I think the final thing about leadership is no one's perfect. I think it's tough being a leader in the first place. And I don't think a lot of the time the people that you look after or, that report to you, however we think of it, we don't often think about our leaders. We are often quite self-centered and we think about ourselves. And I think it's worth remembering that there are many books on leadership, but there isn't a customized book for everyone becoming a leader. And sometimes people become leaders with no guidance as to how to be one at all. So right. There is I think it's worth us remembering that leaders like to be asked how they are too. and how, I love it when people come to me and say, how can I help you? Because a lot of the time our jobs as leaders is, how can I help everyone else, literally? Yeah. But not many people will come and say, can I do something for you? Because we seem untouchable to a certain extent. We always try to have a brave face on. We always try to make sure we show that we are handling everything and that everything is fine. And there is a mental toll that can take over time. So I think it's important for all of us to think about, because every leader has a leader to a certain extent, it's remembering to go up to our leader as well and say, how are you doing? Where are you going? Yeah. Let's go and ask our leaders, what are they going to do next? But I think it's maybe not that, because that might be, they might see it as coming after their jobs or something. But I think there is that element of recognizing the fact that being a leader is not always easy. And as a leader, you need support as well. And it's not necessarily that it needs to come from your team. Your team shouldn't need to support you. That's the whole point of you being their leader, is that you support them. But it's making sure that we recognize that they are people too. And I think a lot of the time with leaders and managers, we can lose track of the fact that they are people too. Yeah, and they can make mistakes. And I think we need to make it okay for leaders to make mistakes, because inevitably this will happen. It's not straightforward. Yeah, sometimes
it's pretty complicated sometimes. Yeah, sure.
It can be.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've got a LinkedIn profile. Is there anywhere else people should go to find out more about you and your work?
Yes, I have a LinkedIn profile. So yes, do follow, connect. If you want to hear all about, at the moment I'm talking a lot about adopting AI and the challenges with that and how we can adopt it and what we need to consider when we're adopting it, because there's a lot of throwing spaghetti on the wall at the moment and seeing what sticks. But we can't do that forever with AI. So I talk a lot about that.
Yeah, we're in an experimental phase for sure.
Yeah, and it's fun. So yeah, if people are interested in that, or Dynamics 365, Power Platform CE, I do a lot of community work as well around the user group. I go to a lot of conferences, so I kind of put posts out for that as well. So if anyone is interested in any of that, please do follow. I do also have a website that is in desperate need of updating, in fairness. But if you want to learn more about me outside of my kind of current role, position, and LinkedIn stuff, you can also check that out. It's aretiiles.com. And there's also photography in there, because I used to be a photographer for many years. So cool. If you fancy looking at some nice photos, go explore it in the website.
Amazing stuff. I'm going to check it out. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining me on Practice Leading. Thanks, Areti.
Thank you, Neil.
In our discussion today, Areti shared some insights for me to reflect on. Firstly, the definition of leadership. For Areti, leadership starts within yourself and then expands to include anyone you can influence or inspire. It doesn't need a formal job title or reporting lines. And Joel Lindstrom talked about this same concept of needing to manage yourself first before you can lead others. Secondly was the value of empathy in leadership. Managers ensure things are done well, and leaders ensure their people are well by providing a supportive and nurturing environment and having a deep caring for the people in their team. Lastly, diversity as a strategic advantage. We all have our own limitations, and I agree with Areti that we can and should surround ourselves with talented people that complement us. Building diverse teams addresses blind spots, offers a greater range of perspectives that can foster innovation and better decision-making. Inclusion isn't just a political slogan or political football these days. It can be used as a strategic lever in your business. Thanks to my guest, Areti Iles, for joining me. You'll find links to Areti's profile in the episode description.
I hope you enjoyed this Practice Leading episode and found it just as inspiring as I did. Are we already connected on LinkedIn? I hope so. But if we're not, please send me an invitation to connect and let me know you listened to Practice Leading. I'd love to be part of your network. Until next time, keep experimenting.